"You're just Mom's decision, not ours." She said it like a sentence, like a ruling from a court I was never invited to speak in. My stepdaughter Meg didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. Her voice was sharp, almost rehearsed, like she'd been practicing those words in her mirror, waiting for the moment she could let them fly. I remember the kitchen lights were too bright. The floor was clean. The fridge was humming. The house looked perfect, like nothing was wrong. But everything was wrong. Meg stood there with her arms crossed, eyes wild with that arrogant kind of youth, the kind that believes cruelty is clarity. She said it in front of her mother. She didn't even lower her voice. And Julia? She didn't say a damn thing. That silence was worse than the words, worse than the shouting, because it wasn't confusion. It was complicity. She agreed with her daughter. Not in words, but in the way she looked at the floor, like she couldn't stomach watching me take the hit. That was the moment I knew I had become optional in my own home. But let me back up. My name is Tom. I'm 43. I live 20 miles outside of Chicago in a house with a dented garage door and a maple tree that drops more leaves than I can rake in a weekend. I bought this house 6 years ago. My name is on the deed. My money poured the foundation, installed the drywall, paid the taxes. I replaced the roof after a storm tore it up last March. I fixed the boiler when it froze last winter. I paid for every upgrade, every coat of paint, every hidden wire behind the walls. This house runs because I made it run. I married Julia when I was 37. She was divorced, cautious, but grateful. At least in the beginning. Her ex-husband Kevin had walked out when the kids were young. Cody was 9. Meg was 6. He said he needed space, then disappeared to Texas. Julia told me once that he sent a birthday card to Meg 2 years late. No return address, no apology, just $20 tucked into a greeting that said, "Hope it's a good one." He's the kind of man who sends selfies from ski resorts but can't remember the name of his son's college. Still, he's their dad. That title carries weight, even when the man behind it vanishes. I didn't vanish. I stayed. Through tantrums, through therapy sessions, through orthodontist bills and flu seasons. I took vacation days to sit in school meetings. I signed every permission slip, paid every late fee. When Julia was exhausted, I cooked. When the car broke down, I fixed it. When the AC died in July, I spent 2 nights sweating in the attic just to rewire the circuit. I didn't ask for much in return. Just respect. Just acknowledgement that I wasn't a ghost walking through this family. That I mattered. But slowly, painfully, I learned that my presence was tolerated, not welcomed. Especially by Meg. When she turned 16, the shift wasn't subtle. She started testing everything. Curfews, boundaries, rules. She'd come home late, smelling like cider, swearing it was just one drink at a friend's house. Her friends started staying over, loud, reckless kids who treated my home like a hotel lobby. Julia said it was normal teenage stuff. I disagreed, so I set a rule. No alcohol in this house. Ever. No exceptions. I don't care if it's just cider. I don't care if everyone else's parents are okay with it. I'm not. Not under this roof. Not on my watch. I said it firmly, clearly, like a man drawing a line in the sand. I didn't yell. I wasn't cruel. I was protecting the home. Protecting them even when they didn't want to be protected. First, Julia backed me. She nodded during the conversations. Repeated the rule. Told Meg to listen. But that support began to erode. Slowly, in subtle ways. She'd roll her eyes when I enforced curfew. She'd sigh when I checked Meg's backpack after a night out. She'd say things like, "Can you just let it go for one night?" Or, "She's going through a phase." I wasn't the one going through a phase. I was the one trying to keep order in a home that had grown allergic to structure. And then came that night. I walked in from work, tired, soaked from the rain. The trash hadn't been taken out. The dishwasher was half loaded. And in the kitchen bin, 2 hard cider cans, still cold, tucked under a layer of napkins like that made them invisible. I looked at Julia. She looked away. That's when Meg exploded. She came down the stairs already angry, already fueled by something I hadn't said yet. I told her calmly, We've talked about this. No alcohol in this house. She scoffed. You don't get to make rules for me. Yes, I said steady. I do. I live here. I pay the bills. I protect this house. I've earned that right. That's when she said it. You're just Mom's decision, not ours. Julia didn't speak, didn't flinch, just stood there, letting her daughter take the shot while I absorbed it like I always had. Like a wall built to endure hits no one else wanted to take. In that moment, everything froze. My hands were wet from the rain, still holding my car keys. The sound of the fridge filled the silence. No one moved. You're just here because Mom decided it. Not because I belonged. Not because I mattered. Not because I chose to love a child that wasn't mine. That was the truth, or at least her truth. And Julia, by saying nothing, made it her truth too. I looked at them, mother and daughter, united by blood and silence, and realized I had been cast in a role I never auditioned for. Provider, enforcer, ATM, ghost. I felt something inside me shift. Not rage, not sadness. Finality. I didn't yell, didn't stomp out of the room. I just nodded once, as if something inside me had clicked into place. That night, I went into the garage and sat alone on the workbench. I stared at the drywall, at the smudges and dust, at the shelves I built with my own hands to keep the clutter off their floor. I thought about every time I drove Meg to her friend's house. Every late night I spent worrying when she wouldn't answer her phone. Every school form I filled out, every fee I paid, every stupid little detail I handled to make this family function. I remembered the night I taught Cody how to parallel park in a frozen parking lot, and he said, "You're better than Dad at this." He didn't mean much by it. It was just a line, but I held onto it like proof that I mattered. Now it felt like a mistake. I stared at the tools on the wall, at the shelves filled with the life I built, and I thought one thing: if I'm just a decision, not a part of them, then it's time I start reversing mine. That night, after Meg's declaration, "You're just Mom's decision, not ours," I didn't sleep. Not because I was angry, because I was done. I lay next to Julia in our bed, both of us silent. She kept her back to me, breathing steady, almost like she was pretending sleep. I knew she wasn't. She never slept when there was tension in the house. But she said nothing. No apology. No whisper of remorse. Just silence, thick, choking, cowardly. Around 2 a.m., I got out of bed, made coffee, black, bitter, sat at the kitchen table with a yellow notepad and wrote a list. A detailed, methodical, surgical list. Everything I funded. Everything I maintained. Everything I enabled. It was longer than I expected. Meg's iPhone, still on my AT&T family plan. Her MacBook, bought by me 2 birthdays ago. Spotify Premium on my monthly subscription. Netflix, Disney+, HBO all running through my email. VPN and antivirus, paid yearly on my card. Car insurance, bundled with mine, discounted through my employer. AAA membership, I added her for emergencies. Her college portal registered under my email. Emergency contact, listed as me, not Kevin. Wi-Fi router, I installed it, configured it, maintained it. Passwords, all managed through my account. I stared at the list for a long time. It wasn't just services. It was infrastructure. I had built an invisible skeleton for her life. A network of protection, convenience, and continuity she never saw. Like a city's power grid, only noticed when it goes dark. So I decided to flip the switch. Quietly, systematically, without warning. The next morning, while Julia was at work and Meg was still asleep, I called AT&T and transferred Meg's phone line to Julia's name. Took 20 minutes. The rep was confused. Asked why I was removing her. I told him the truth. She doesn't recognize me as family. She doesn't want me involved. So I'm stepping back. I removed her device from the Apple family sharing group. Deleted her from Find My iPhone. She'd still have her phone, just not on my dime. Next, subscriptions. Spotify removed her from the family plan. Netflix changed the password, created a new profile, locked the kid's profile with a PIN. Same with Disney Plus, HBO, Hulu. Every service reset. She'd open them and find a wall. Then I logged into our router's admin panel, removed her MAC address, blocked her device entirely. When she tried to connect, the message would be simple. Access denied. Contact the network owner. That owner was me. Her MacBook? Still technically mine. The receipt was in my email. But I wasn't going to take it. Not yet. I just logged in remotely and removed the VPN, the antivirus license, and the Office 365 subscription. Then I called the insurance provider. Spoke to Tina, the same rep who helped me add Meg to the policy last year. I asked her to remove Meg from the bundled plan. She asked why. She told me I'm not her family, I said, so she can be insured by someone who is. I sent Julia the new policy documents. No message. No argument. Just an email titled, Updated Coverage. Her name was now responsible for Meg's premiums. I unlinked Meg's card from my checking account. No more Venmo top-ups. No more surprise charges. I locked the banking app and deleted the saved credentials from her devices. The last step was the most personal. I logged into the college portal, navigated to the student contact info section, deleted my number, removed myself as the emergency contact, typed in Julia's number, typed in Kevin's, the one still listed as Dad in their phones, saved, closed the tab. No announcement, no confrontation, just a quiet, total extraction. I didn't want revenge. This wasn't about payback. It was about clarity. She said I didn't belong. I listened. That evening I grilled burgers for dinner, set the table, sat down and ate. Julia noticed the calm in me. She kept looking at me sideways, as if expecting an explosion that never came. Meg came down, grabbed a plate, ate without a word. She didn't know yet. Not then. But systems take time to fail. They don't crash in a moment. They unravel, silently, invisibly, until the lights flicker and no one knows why. It started with Wi-Fi. That night, I heard her footsteps upstairs, fast and irritated. Then the call. Mom, the Wi-Fi's not working. Julia called out to me. Tom, the internet's down. I took a sip of my beer. No, it's not. It's working for me. Meg stomped down the stairs. It says access denied. I shrugged. Must be a device issue. She glared. Can you fix it? I smiled calmly. Not my responsibility anymore. Julia's face tightened, but she didn't speak. She saw something in me she hadn't seen in years. Finality. The next day, the emails started. One from Spotify. You've been removed from the family plan. Another from Netflix. We noticed a new login. Please enter your password. Then the insurance letter came. Policy update, driver removed. And the college portal. Emergency contact details have been changed. One by one, the threads snapped. 3 days later, Julia confronted me. Tom, she said, standing in the doorway while I read the paper. What are you doing? Nothing, I said. Just making sure everything reflects reality. What does that mean? It means your daughter told me I don't belong. So I've stepped out of the parts where I never truly existed. She didn't argue, just stood there, the realization settling in. She hadn't lost her husband. She just discovered what life looks like when he stops carrying everyone's weight. That night, Meg knocked on the office door. Why can't I use the Wi-Fi? I looked at her calmly, coldly. Because I blocked your device. Why? Because I'm not part of your life. I'm just your mom's decision, not yours. So from now on, she handles your systems, your bills, your access. She scowled. That's petty. I shook my head. No. Petty is using every system I built while telling me I don't matter. This isn't petty. This is honest. She tried again. I didn't mean it like that. I was just mad. You said what you meant, I said, and I believed you. She left in silence, and I finally slept that night, not out of victory but relief, not because they learned, but because I finally stopped pretending. 3 days. That's how long it took for the cracks to show. First, they thought I was bluffing. that it was some kind of emotional tantrum dressed up as strategy. That I'd cave. I didn't. I kept the same routine. Woke up early, made my coffee, read the paper, drove to work, came home, ate dinner, watched the news, slept. Not cold, not cruel, just absent. Withdrawn from their world like a man easing out of a burning room. No raised voices, no drama, just silence. And that silence, that calm, rattled them more than anger ever could. Meg stopped talking to me completely, not even sideways glances anymore. She lived on her phone until that failed. Then she lived in her room, pacing, whispering, texting people who probably asked her what happened. I imagined her trying to explain it without sounding like the villain. That was the thing about Meg. She knew how to make herself the victim. Julia didn't confront me again, not directly. But I could feel her walking softer, making meals more carefully, as if guilt had crept into her hands. She didn't apologize. That would have required admitting something had gone wrong. Instead, she hoped silence would restore what silence had broken. Didn't. On the fifth night, the failure came. It was 1:40 a.m. I was asleep, finally, deeply. And then the phone buzzed. Meg's number. I didn't answer. 1:42, another call. Then a text. Help. My car won't start. It broke down. I'm alone near a diner. I don't know what to do. I stared at the screen. The name. The words. The panic. And I felt nothing. No spike of adrenaline. No rush to grab keys. Just a strange, calm emptiness. The same kind of silence I'd been handed days before. I copied the message and sent it to the family group chat. Meg is trying to reach me. I'm no longer her emergency contact. Julia and Kevin, please check your phones. And then I placed my phone face down, lay back down, and closed my eyes. 10 minutes passed. 15. No one knocked. No one screamed. Then, 2:18 a.m. The front door slammed. Voices. The unmistakable sound of Kevin's voice in the hallway. I didn't get up, just listened from the couch. I swear to God, Meg, if you ever call me that late again. I didn't know who else. Mom didn't answer, Tom. I don't care. I'm not your damn chauffeur. Figure it out. And then the door again. Harder this time. His footsteps vanished. Meg stood there for a while, crying. I heard it. And Julia, finally, tried to comfort her. Quietly, uselessly. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Not proud. Not satisfied. But not guilty either. Because that's what happens when you remove yourself from the system. It fails. By morning, the air was stiff with exhaustion. No one spoke over breakfast. Julia avoided my eyes. Meg didn't come down at all. Her car was still dead in the driveway, hood popped like a wound. I made no move to fix it. That evening, she approached me. Not loudly. Not with arrogance. Soft. Cautious. Can we talk? I nodded. She stood awkwardly by the hallway, chewing her lip, phone in hand. I get it now, she said. About the stuff. The Wi-Fi. The accounts. The phone. The insurance. All of it. I didn't know how much of it was you. I didn't want to feel controlled. I said nothing. She continued. I thought you were trying to smother me. But now I see it wasn't about control. It was about care. Structure. Safety. Still, I didn't speak. I'm sorry, she said. That word, sorry, it didn't ring hollow. But it didn't fix anything either. Because apologies don't rebuild houses after the fire. They just acknowledge that something burned. I looked up at her. Finally. Why did it take failure for you to see it? I asked. Why did I have to vanish for you to understand what I was holding up? I don't know, she whispered. I was stupid. No, I said. You were told by this world that a man without blood has no say. And you believed it. Because that's easier than respecting someone who didn't have to love you, but chose to anyway. She nodded. No excuses. No tantrums. I added you back as my emergency contact, she said. I want you there. I nodded once. But I didn't say thank you. Because it's not a gift to be respected. It's a right. And I had bled for that right. Julia came to me later that night, after Meg had gone upstairs. She told me everything, she said. About the breakdown, about Kevin, about how he screamed at her. I didn't respond. She said you're the only one who's ever made her feel safe. Still, I said nothing. Julia stepped closer. Are we broken? I looked at her, at the woman who had once held my hand during court dates, who once whispered to me that I was the glue in her family. I don't know, I said. But I know I'm done building things for people who don't know how to keep them. She didn't argue, just nodded, sat beside me, quietly. The next day, Meg came home from school and handed me a piece of paper. Her passwords, her accounts, a note that said, "If you want to reset it all, I trust you now." I didn't need to. She wasn't asking for the systems. She was asking for trust. And for the first time in weeks, I gave a small piece of it back. Not all, but some. Because when a system fails, it doesn't reboot overnight. It rebuilds slowly, cautiously. One boundary at a time. The days after the breakdown were quieter. Not healed, just quieter. Meg was polite, careful. She knocked before entering a room. Said thank you when she borrowed the car. Started washing her dishes instead of stacking them in the sink like some silent protest. It wasn't love. It was adjustment. A shift in gravity. Julia, on the other hand, moved like she was waiting for a verdict. She touched my shoulder when passing behind me, sat closer than usual on the couch, made my favorite meals not out of affection but out of guilt. The apology never came in words, just gestures, half measures. I accepted them but didn't reward them. I didn't offer forgiveness wrapped in smiles or pretend that things were back to normal. Because they weren't. Not even close. I had pulled myself from the foundation of the house, and now the floors creaked. That weekend, Meg received a letter from her college. She sat at the table with it unopened for 20 minutes. Then she asked, "Can you read this with me?" I sat across from her. She peeled back the envelope with shaking fingers. It was a billing notice. A reminder that her tuition portal still had a section labeled, "Emergency Contact." Kevin. He hadn't replied to the emails. He hadn't returned calls. His number led to a voicemail that hadn't been updated in months. Meg looked at me. That same look she used to give when she was 10 and scraped her knee on the driveway. Only this time, the wound was her own making. "What do I do?" she asked. I didn't answer, because the truth is I didn't know anymore. The old me would have logged in, paid it, smoothed the wrinkles, covered the gaps, given her one more cushion against consequence. But that man had been buried under her words. "I don't know," I finally said. She nodded slowly. "I thought he'd help, just once." That's when the realization settled in. Not in a dramatic collapse, but in her silence. The way she folded the letter. The way she placed it carefully in her backpack like it carried more than numbers. It carried truth. Kevin wasn't coming. And she had cut off the only man who ever did. Julia found me later, sitting in the garage again. Same chair, same air, same ache in my ribs that had nothing to do with injury. "She's scared," Julia said. "She should be," I replied. "She didn't mean to choose him over you." But she did. Julia sat on the step leading inside. She looked smaller than I remembered. Like the weight of the house had finally found her shoulders. "She thought he was her father," she whispered. "And I thought I was," I said. We sat in silence. That night, Meg tried one more time. She stood in the doorway of the office, holding her laptop. "It says I can't access the college portal," she said. "I know," I replied. "I removed my email from it." "Can you add it back?" "No." "Why?" "Because I'm not your father." She didn't argue. She just nodded once. Walked away. That was the moment I knew the lesson had landed. Not with shouting. Not with anger. But with absence. They had always assumed I'd be there. Until I wasn't. And now the bill had come due. And no one had the balance but me.